Hey everyone. I'll start with a bit of a brag. I know it's not exactly the humblest way to kick things off, but hang in there with me. I'm 40 years old, and in the past few months, I've somehow ended up with not one, not two, but three absolutely stunning women. Seriously, who can say they've managed to pull something like that off? And no, I'm not talking about some casual fling or some fantasy scenario here. This was real. Each woman was beautiful, confident, and part of the plan I had carefully put into motion. Now, before you roll your eyes and think I'm just full of hot air, let me set the record straight. This wasn't about me trying to prove something or some midlife crisis kicking in. No, this was about revenge. Sweet, deliberate revenge against my wife. Yeah, you heard me right. This isn't one of those stories where I have some deep epiphany or life-changing moment. Nope. This is raw, messy, and completely unapologetic. If you're curious how this all unfolded, buckle up, because it's a ride, and I'm not holding anything back. Let me rewind and take you to where all of this started. I'm just your average guy, nothing flashy, no millionaire lifestyle to boast about. I've been married for 11 years, and together longer than that. We have 2 kids, a mortgage, and a pretty standard life. If you'd asked me before any of this went down, I would have told you our marriage wasn't perfect, but it wasn't broken either. I thought we were solid, like an old pair of shoes. They're not new, but they still get the job done. Turns out I was completely wrong. I was blindsided that night, the night everything changed. Started like any other evening. I came home from work, worn out but looking forward to a quiet night. She made dinner, something nice, like she was trying to put in a little extra effort. But there was something in her eyes, a certain look like she had something heavy weighing on her mind. Little did I know, she was about to drop a bomb on me. We sat down at the table, the kids already asleep, and I dug into my meal. Everything seemed normal, until suddenly, she hit me with it. No casual chat about our day or work. She just dove straight into it, talking about how our marriage had become stagnant, like we'd lost the spark. Her words stung like daggers, but I kept my composure. Don't get me wrong. I knew things hadn't been as exciting as they once were. But after 10 years, 2 kids, and full-time jobs, things slow down, right? That's normal. But I never thought it meant it was over. To me, it was just a sign that we needed to work harder. Marriage takes effort. But apparently, I was the only one who thought that way. I sat there, letting her go on and on about how bored she was, how everything had become so predictable. I was still chewing when she dropped the real bombshell. She said she wanted to open our relationship. I froze. The food in my mouth turned to rubber. I couldn't taste a thing. I tried to keep my face neutral, but inside, I was screaming. I thought she was going to suggest counseling, or maybe talk about spicing things up, or hell, even consider separation. But this was something I never saw coming. She kept talking, completely unaware of the storm brewing inside me. I don't see it as cheating, she said casually, like she was discussing trying out a new diet. We both need some space, some freedom. Freedom? The nerve. She was sitting there, pitching me this idea like it was no big deal, like it was something every couple does when things get tough. She wanted the freedom to sleep with someone else, without any guilt. And she was trying to make it sound like a perfectly reasonable thing to ask for. She wanted the security of marriage, but the thrill of playing around with no consequences. I didn't say a word. I just kept eating, chewing slowly, nodding occasionally like I was really considering what she had to say. But inside, I was fighting the urge to flip the table over and walk out. Yet, as she kept justifying how this would improve our marriage, something clicked inside me. It was over. Our marriage was dead, and she just hadn't admitted it yet. When your wife asks for an open relationship, that's it. She's checked out emotionally, mentally, probably even physically by this point. What she was really asking for wasn't a break. It was permission to sleep with someone else. I could feel it. There was already someone else in her mind, if not her bed. She was trying to make it sound acceptable. But instead of exploding, instead of confronting her on the spot, I stayed calm. I agreed. Yeah, I agreed to her ridiculous plan. Why? Because I knew I could play the long game. She thought she had one, that she had just given herself a free pass to do whatever while I stayed home. Clueless. What she didn't know was that I had plans of my own. If she wanted an open relationship, fine. Let her think she was in control. But I'd get my revenge in ways she couldn't even fathom. So yeah, I agreed. I smiled, took another bite of my tasteless dinner, and said, "You know what? Maybe you're right." And that's how it all started. That night, after our little chat about opening the relationship, I couldn't sleep. She was passed out next to me, earplugs in, wearing her ridiculous eye mask, the one she swears helps her sleep. I couldn't help but laugh. She thought she was being so sneaky, but she had no idea what was coming. We used to be totally open with each other. Phones, passwords, everything. So, when I slipped my hand under her pillow to grab her phone, I hoped she hadn't changed the password. I took a deep breath, typed in the code, and boom, it opened. A wave of excitement and rage hit me all at once. She thought I wouldn't notice. The first thing I did was check her messages. I won't lie, I was shaking a little. My heart was pounding. I had no idea what I was about to find, but it didn't take long to confirm what I already suspected. Right there in the middle of her chat app was the guy she was planning to cheat with. A typical pretty boy posing all cocky in his profile pic. I could tell right away. He probably thought he had it made, getting some easy, no-strings-attached fun with my wife. And the messages? Let's just say, if they hadn't physically crossed the line yet, it was only a matter of time. The way they were talking, the way she responded, it was clear. She had mentally checked out. Honestly, though, does it really matter if she hasn't crossed the physical line yet? To me, emotional betrayal is just as devastating. And when I saw the photos and those flirty emojis, it was clear. It wasn't going to stay emotional for long. I didn't waste any time. Screenshots? Taken. His Instagram profile? Saved. Every little piece of evidence sent straight to my phone. I wasn't about to leave anything to chance. By the time I was done, I had enough to bring her whole house of cards crashing down. But I wasn't going to act just yet. I had to be smart about this. I needed to plan, to think a few steps ahead. So I called for backup. I hit up a couple of my closest friends. Yeah, I knew they'd be pissed. It was the middle of the night, after all. But I couldn't wait. This was too important. I needed them to understand exactly what I was going to do and to back me up. No questions, no hesitations. One by one, I woke them up and told them to meet me at the park. No explanations, just a simple, "Get there." By the time we all met, it had to be around 1 or 2 in the morning. The park was dead quiet, just the soft hum of streetlights cutting through the darkness. I could tell they were confused, maybe even a little annoyed. But as soon as they saw my face, they knew something serious was going down. "What's going on, man?" one of them asked, still rubbing sleep out of his eyes. I didn't waste a second. I laid it out. Everything. The dinner conversation, her ridiculous idea of an open marriage, the messages I had found. At first, they were quiet, just standing there, letting it all sink in. But I could see it. The shock on their faces, slowly turning into something else. When I showed them the screenshots, their expressions shifted. They were angry, livid even. One of them spoke up. "So, what are you going to do about it?" I told them my plan. It wasn't fully fleshed out yet, but the essentials were in place. I had to act fast. There was no time to waste. I couldn't let her think she was the one in control. When this all came to light, I had to be the one holding all the cards. But I needed their help. At first, they thought I was out of my mind. I could tell by their faces they were processing it all, weighing what I was asking. It was risky, it was bold. But after a few more minutes of discussing the details, they agreed. No turning back now. We were on the same page. We couldn't waste any more time. This had to be handled swiftly, with precision. No room for hesitation. By the time we left the park, I had this strange mix of excitement and anxiety in my gut. On one hand, I was ready. The plan was set, and my friends were in it with me. But on the other hand, I knew this was a point of no return. What I was about to do would change everything. And there was no turning back. Back home, I slipped into bed quietly next to her. She was already passed out, earplugs in, that silly eye mask covering her face like always. I lay there, staring up at the ceiling, my mind racing. The fear started to creep in. What if I messed it all up? What if she figured it out before I could pull the trigger? But then I thought about the messages. The way she had acted so smug, so casual, and all the fear vanished. This needed to happen. There was no more waiting. It was time. When the first light of day crept through the blinds, I was already wide awake. My mind was running at full speed. I couldn't just sit there anymore. The previous night's revelations were still burning in my mind. I wasn't going to keep playing the part of the clueless husband. It was time to make my move. Without wasting another second, I grabbed my phone and called a divorce lawyer. It didn't matter that it was early. If this guy was any good, he'd understand why I was calling at the crack of dawn. When he picked up, I didn't bother with pleasantries. "I want to file for divorce," I said, my voice sharp and direct. "My wife's cheating on me, and I need to start the paperwork immediately." There was a brief pause. Maybe he wasn't expecting such a direct approach, but he quickly got down to business, asking for the details and explaining what needed to happen next. He mentioned evidence gathering, but I didn't let him finish. "Don't worry about that," I told him. "I've got it covered." He set up an appointment for that afternoon to start the paperwork. When I hung up, adrenaline surged through me. This was real now. I wasn't just some guy catching his wife in a little emotional affair. No, I was about to end my marriage. And as painful as it was, I wasn't going to let her get away with this. Not now. Not ever. While I was locking down the legal side, my plan kept moving. This wasn't just about a divorce. If all I wanted was to walk away, I could have packed my stuff and left. But no, this was about revenge. I wasn't about to let her just walk away from this with no consequences. My friends had already tracked down the guy she was planning to cheat with. His Instagram was wide open, showing off his fake influencer lifestyle. Expensive watches, flashy cars, photos with models who probably didn't even know his name. Classic narcissistic loser pretending to be something he wasn't. And when my friends confronted him, he folded like a cheap tent. I figured there might be some pushback, maybe a little back and forth, but no. This guy was a complete coward. He didn't even try to fight back. Apparently, he was all bravado behind a screen, but face to face, he was nothing. "I swear, man, I didn't know she was married," he blurted out, probably trying to weasel his way out of it. My friends didn't even raise their voices. They simply laid it out. He was in way deeper than he realized. And he was begging them for a way out. He knew he was in over his head. He didn't try to make excuses or run. He realized that getting involved with a married woman wasn't going to be a small mistake. It was going to ruin him if he didn't play his cards right. So I gave him an ultimatum. He could disappear from her life, never reach out again, or he could step into my world and help me with my plan. I wasn't interested in punishing the guy, not physically anyway. Sure, I was beyond furious, but this wasn't about him. This was about her. If she'd kept her hands to herself, this guy wouldn't even be a part of the picture. So, instead of burning myself out trying to make him suffer, I figured I'd make him useful. From that moment on, he wasn't just some random guy trying to break up my marriage. He became a tool, a pawn in my game. Every move he made, every word exchanged between them, I knew it all. My friends kept tabs on him, and he, like a well-trained dog, kept delivering. I made sure he understood one simple thing. If he so much as thought about warning her, there'd be hell to pay. And just like that, the guy went from being an annoyance to becoming my informant. He wasn't loyal to me, of course. He wasn't doing this out of some sense of camaraderie or honor. He was just trying to save his own skin. But I didn't care about his motives. As long as he fed me the information I needed, I'd let him stay in one piece, keep his little world intact. For now, anyway. Then came the day she thought she was outsmarting me. The day she thought she was pulling one over on me, sneaking away for a weekend of whatever she had planned. It was a Friday morning when she dropped her little bomb. Over breakfast, like it was just another casual chat, she told me she was heading to her parents' house for a few days. I saw right through it. She tried to act like it was just another trip, no big deal. But I knew exactly what she was up to. "I'm going to visit my parents this weekend," she said, casually sipping her coffee like everything was normal. I just smiled and played my part, pretending to be the oblivious husband. "That's nice," I said, holding back a smirk. I didn't let on that I saw through her. "Say hi to them for me," I added, forcing a calm tone. She smiled back, thinking she was getting away with something. She probably thought she was going to slip away and do whatever she wanted, while I stayed home, clueless. But inside, I was already several steps ahead, preparing for the next phase of my plan. The moment she left, it was game time. I wasn't playing defense anymore. The tables had turned. I wasn't just waiting for the storm to pass. I was about to unleash my own. As soon as that door clicked shut behind her, I felt a rush of excitement, not fear. My heart pounded, but it wasn't with anxiety. It was because I was the one in control now. I wasn't the fool anymore. I grabbed my phone, sent a quick message to my friends, and told them it was time. 30 minutes later, they pulled up outside. There was booze, there was loud laughter, and there were 3 girls in their 20s ready to bring an energy into my house that I hadn't seen in years. The vibe in the place changed immediately, like a light being switched on. We wasted no time. The alcohol flowed freely, and before long, the house was buzzing with noise. The alcohol did its thing, and soon we were laughing, throwing back shots, toasting to the dumbest things we could think of. Felt almost surreal. These girls brought a chaos into my life that I hadn't experienced in a long time. Wild, carefree, and full of reckless fun. They were flirty, carefree, and didn't care about anything except enjoying the moment. The more we drank, the easier everything seemed. All the weight of the past weeks, the stress, the anger, it all started to slip away. And in the midst of all that, I felt a kind of thrill that was hard to ignore. I knew something she didn't. Her little boyfriend wasn't showing up. He had blocked her. I set that up myself. He was nothing more than a puppet, and he didn't even realize it. While she thought she was heading off for a romantic weekend, I knew that she'd be back sooner than she expected. Angry, humiliated when she realized he'd ghosted her. She was going to come crawling back. But until then, I was going to make the most of it. The girls, tipsy and laughing, suggested we take the party upstairs. The energy shifted once again, playful, charged. And with every shot I took, I could feel myself letting go. Why not? This was my revenge, and she never saw it coming. Upstairs, one of the girls grabbed my arm, leading me into another room, as if we were caught up in the heat of the moment. The atmosphere was charged, electric, and before I knew it, I was fully caught up in it. Things escalated quickly. The girls were laughing, carefree, enjoying the chaos, as if it was all part of the fun, and I couldn't help but get lost in it. It was surreal. The warmth of the alcohol, the intensity of the night. It felt like a freedom I hadn't allowed myself in years. For so long, I had been the good husband, the reliable one. But now I was throwing that all out the window. I wasn't the guy she thought I was anymore. I was living for the moment, and the feeling of revenge burned hotter with each passing second. I was consumed by it. I wasn't thinking about anything except the rush, the thrill of it all. The 3 girls, full of laughter and life, made the whole night feel like it was on fire. I won't lie, it was intoxicating. The kind of rush that makes everything else fade into the background. The heat, the energy, it was exactly what I needed. And then, just when I thought I couldn't get more caught up in it, I heard it. Her voice, slicing through the haze. "What the hell is going on here?" she screamed. I didn't hear the front door open, didn't hear her footsteps on the stairs. But there she was, standing in the doorway, her face a mix of shock, disbelief, and fury. She looked around the room, at me in bed with 3 half-naked women, the air thick with booze and bad decisions. For a moment, everything froze, just long enough for me to turn to her, a wide, mocking grin spreading across my face. "Oh, this," I said, dripping with sarcasm. "It's just an open relationship, sweetheart. Like you wanted. By the way, how's your weekend with your parents going?" Her face drained of color in an instant. I saw the realization hit her. She knew. She knew I'd flipped the script on her. I'd set her up, and I had the satisfaction of watching her crumble. I could see the rage in her eyes as she lost it, consumed by fury. She stormed towards the bed, ripping the girls away from me one by one. Her hands shook with anger as she tossed their clothes at them, shouting for them to leave. The girls, giggling and stumbling from the alcohol, didn't put up a fight. They grabbed their stuff and scrambled out, half-dressed, their laughter echoing through the house as they tumbled down the stairs and out the door. It was like a scene from a movie, chaos and mayhem, and then the silence when it was all over. Once the girls were gone, everything felt a little too real. She crumpled onto the edge of the bed, her hands clutching her face as the sobs started. And these weren't soft, quiet sobs. No, this was a full-on breakdown, the kind of crying that shakes your entire body. She was a mess, falling apart right there in front of me, unable to control the flood of emotion. But honestly, I didn't care. I took my time getting dressed.
No rush, no hurry.
She sat there, unraveling, and I just went about my business, calmly buttoning up my shirt and adjusting my belt. When I was done, I sat beside her on the bed. But I didn't feel sympathy. Not anymore. She had pushed us to this point, and now it was her turn to deal with the consequences. "How was your day?" I asked, keeping it almost casual. She looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen from crying, tears still streaming down her cheeks. That's when it hit her. The realization slammed into her like a freight train. She knew. She knew I had set the whole thing up. She understood that I had planned it all. She didn't need to say a word. Her eyes told me everything. She opened her mouth, probably to try and explain, but I stopped her. "Don't bother," I said, my voice calm but firm. "A lawyer will call you tomorrow. We're done. I'm filing for divorce." I stood up, glancing at her one last time. There's no point in arguing. Nothing's going to change. What's done is done. With that, I turned and walked out, leaving her to cry. No more fights. No more drama. I was done. She made her bed. Now she had to lie in it. The next day, I knew I had to talk it over with my friends. We'd been through a lot together. But this was on another level. I shot them a text in the morning, and they all agreed to meet up at our usual hangout. This local bar where we'd spent countless nights, swapping stories and sharing beers. But today, I was the one with a story to tell. When I walked in, they were already there, sitting around our usual table, beers in hand, grinning like they knew what was coming. As soon as I sat down, one of them leaned forward, eager. "All right, man, we've been waiting to hear it. Don't leave anything out." I didn't need any extra prompting. I dove straight into it. From the moment she left the house, thinking she was off to her lover, to finding out that the guy had blocked her, leaving her high and dry. She came home to a surprise she never saw coming. My friends were hanging on every word, laughing and shaking their heads as I described the madness. The booze, the girls, and of course the grand finale. My wife walking in on it all. Wait! One of them interrupted, barely holding back laughter. She walks in, and you just go, "Oh hey, it's an open relationship, no big deal?" Couldn't help but chuckle. "Yeah, pretty much." She froze for a second, didn't know what to do, then lost it. Started screaming and throwing the girls out like she hadn't just asked for an open relationship a few days ago. Another friend shook his head, grinning. "Damn, man, you pulled that off perfectly. I'd have paid to see that." The laughter kept rolling as I kept talking, explaining how she cried on the bed after kicking the girls out, completely broken, and how I, without a hint of drama, told her that the divorce papers would be coming the next day. One of the quieter guys at the table leaned back in his chair, smirking. "You know, I have to admit, I'm kinda jealous. 3 girls at once and she had to walk in and see it? That's next-level revenge." I shook my head, still grinning. Yeah, it was something, but honestly, it wasn't even about revenge for me. It was about showing her that she wasn't in control anymore. She couldn't call the shots. There was a brief pause at the table as my words sank in. Sure, revenge was part of it, but the bigger part was reclaiming my dignity, the dignity she had shredded with her lies and betrayal. I raised my glass and met each of their eyes. "I gotta thank you guys. Seriously, you've had my back through all of this. Without you, I don't know how I would have made it through. Everyone deserves friends like you." They clinked their glasses with mine, and for a moment, there was this quiet, unspoken sense of solidarity. These guys had been with me through thick and thin, and I wouldn't have made it out of this mess without them. We finished our beers, and I started talking about the divorce process. The crazy thing? The divorce wasn't even dramatic. After everything that happened, I think she just realized there was no fight left in her. She knew she'd lost, and dragging it out wasn't going to change a thing. One of them raised an eyebrow. No last-minute drama? No screaming matches. I shook my head. Nope. It was surprisingly calm. We split everything pretty evenly. I wasn't trying to take everything from her. What's the point? It wasn't worth the hassle. The house, the cars, everything, we divided it without much of a fight. She was too tired to argue. And honestly, I didn't have the energy for it either. They nodded in understanding. We'd all seen divorces that dragged on for years, both sides trying to tear each other apart. But with mine, felt like we both knew the game was over. There was no pretending anymore. She signed the papers, and that was that. So what now? One of my friends asked, leaning forward, intrigued. You've got your freedom back. What's next for you? I smiled, though it was tinged with a bit of weariness. I don't know, man. I'm just focusing on moving forward. I've spent enough time looking back, trying to figure out where it all went wrong. Now, it's time to let it go and start fresh. The rest of the night was a blur of drinks, laughter, and stories. But when I finally left the bar, it hit me. The weight of everything that had happened was still there, lingering. I felt lighter in a way, but it was a mixed feeling. It was like I had closed a long, painful chapter of my life, but there was still the residue of everything that led up to it. Now, if you're still with me, I just want to say thank you. I know this isn't easy to read, and I'm sure some of it might have been tough to hear. But the thing is, no matter how messy life gets, there's always a way out. I've learned that the hard way. And if there's one thing I want to share with you, it's this. Don't ignore the warning signs. It's easy to get comfortable, to just keep going and pretend everything's fine. But comfort can be a trap. It can blind you. Take a moment to really look at your life, at your partner, at where you're headed. Don't wait for things to fall apart before you start paying attention. And if things do fall apart, don't just sit there and take it. You need to take control. I can tell you from experience, you don't want to be the person who finds out everything at the worst possible time. So here's where I am now. It's been a little over a year since all of this went down, and honestly, I still can't believe how much has changed. At the time, everything felt like it was collapsing. But now, looking back, I can see how it was all a necessary part of the process. It's like life is finally starting to make sense again. First off, the divorce, it's final. Over. And honestly, it was the best decision I could have made. I don't regret it at all. The process wasn't nearly as complicated as I'd imagined, especially considering how messy things could have gotten. I've heard nightmare stories about divorces that drag on forever, with endless court battles and emotional fights over everything. But for me, after that final confrontation, she didn't have the energy to keep fighting. Maybe she realized it was pointless, or maybe, deep down, she knew it was over too. Either way, we split everything, the house, the cars, the savings.
No drama, no fights.
It was a clean break. I got what I needed, and she got what she deserved. Now, let's talk about what really matters. Life after the storm. It's been a wild ride, but in the best possible way. After the divorce, I made a choice to finally focus on myself. I'm not talking about just going to the gym, though, yeah, that happened. It's incredible what a little freedom and motivation can do for your physical health. I lost a few pounds, gained muscle, and honestly, I've never felt better. But that's just the surface. The real transformation came from within. For the first time in ages, I started asking myself the tough questions. What do I actually want out of life? What's my future going to look like now that I'm not tied to a toxic relationship? It wasn't easy. I'll admit it took time to figure it out. But slowly, the answers began to come into focus. One of the most surprising things was what happened with my career. I threw myself into work, not just as a distraction, but as a way of reinventing myself. And here's the crazy part. Once I stopped holding back and took some risks, things started falling into place. I'd been toying with the idea of starting a side business, something in tech, but I'd never had the courage to take the plunge. Well, after the divorce, I went for it. I poured in the time, the effort, the energy. There were plenty of sleepless nights and moments where I wasn't sure it would work out. But bit by bit, things started coming together. I built a team, found some investors, and before I knew it, my business was starting to take off. A year later, we're not just surviving, we're thriving. I'm not rolling in cash or anything, but I found something more valuable than money. Fulfillment. I've even gotten some recognition locally for my work. Nothing huge, but it was nice to see that all those late nights were finally paying off. And the best part? I'm doing this all on my terms. I don't have to answer to anyone. That feeling, the freedom to do what I want, how I want, is something I never thought I'd experience, especially after being stuck in a marriage that held me back. On the personal side, things have also turned around. I've reconnected with old friends, made new ones, and most importantly, I've learned to enjoy my own company again. After the divorce, I intentionally stayed single for a while. I wasn't looking for anything serious. I needed time to heal, to figure out who I really was without the weight of a relationship dragging me down. But eventually, someone came into the picture. Just as these things tend to happen. We met through mutual friends, no expectations, no plans, and we just clicked. She's smart, funny, independent. Everything I didn't even know I needed. And the best part? She's not trying to change me or ask anything of me. There's no drama, no baggage. It's just easy. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm with someone who lets me be myself, without any pressure. I'm taking things slow this time, not rushing into anything. But for the first time in years, I'm actually hopeful about the future. As for my ex, from what I've heard, things haven't gone the way she hoped. She's had a few relationships since we split, but none of them have lasted. I don't wish her ill will, though. Well, not anymore. I'm past that. If anything, I hope she figures out what she's really looking for. But honestly, I don't think she ever will. People like her rarely do. Looking back, it's wild to think how much has changed in just over a year. If you told me then that I'd be running a successful business, in great shape, and dating someone new, I wouldn't have believed it. But here I am. And if there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that sometimes you have to lose everything to find yourself. So, to anyone reading this, especially if you're going through something similar, know that it gets better. It might feel like you'll never get through it, but trust me, you will. Just hold on. Take control of your life, make the tough choices when it matters. So yeah, life's looking pretty damn good right now, and I'm planning to keep it that way.